The day my brother called me a selfish beach for not paying his $380,000 mortgage, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Then I guess I'm selfish." That night I called my lawyer. 3 weeks later I watched a CMH's notice get taped to his front door. I didn't feel guilty, not even for a second, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Iris and I'm 31 years old. I work as a compliance analyst at a mid-sized financial services firm in Calgary. I rent a 2-bedroom condo on the northwest side. I drive a used Subaru, and I have exactly one hobby: my 3 cats, who are, genuinely, the best judges of character I have ever met. Every single one of them hated my brother's wife on sight. I should have listened to them years ago. Growing up, there were 2 of us, me and my brother Clifton, who is 4 years older. To hear my parents tell it, Clifton was simply born under a luckier star. He was charming in the way that certain people are charming, loudly, exhaustingly, in a way that made you feel slightly guilty for noticing how little substance was underneath. He played junior hockey until his knee gave out. He was the kind of person who always had a story about how something wasn't his fault. I was the quiet one, the one who got decent grades and didn't cause scenes at family dinners. I was also, as it turns out, the one who paid her credit card in full every month and actually read her employment contract before signing it. These are not glamorous qualities. They don't make anyone the favorite at Thanksgiving. But they mattered later. Clifton met his wife, Renata, in his late 20s. She was beautiful and very aware of it, which would have been fine on its own, but she also had a talent for making the people around her feel like they were auditioning for her approval. My cats hated her immediately. My oldest one, a gray tabby named Miso, actually hissed, which she had never done to a single person in 7 years. I thought it was funny at the time. Clifton told me to control my animals. Renata called cats emotionally unavailable pets and laughed in a way that suggested she found this deeply clever. They got married in Canmore. Beautiful venue. My parents spent $40,000 on that wedding. I gave them a very nice stand mixer and a weekend stay at a lodge near Banff. Clifton told my mother he'd hoped for a cash gift. He said this apparently without irony. For the first few years of their marriage, I didn't see them much. I was building my career, dealing with 2 rounds of layoffs in the industry, and generally trying to keep my own financial life from falling apart during a period when that felt like a full-time job. We saw each other at Christmas and maybe once in the summer. Clifton and Renata always seemed to be renovating something or buying something or planning a trip. I never thought too hard about where the money was coming from because, frankly, it wasn't my business. Then my mother called me on a Tuesday night in February. "I need you to come home this weekend," she said. "There's something we need to talk about as a family." I drove to Red Deer on the Saturday. My father looked like he hadn't slept. My mother had baked 3 different things, which is what she does when she's anxious. Clifton and Renata were already there when I arrived. Renata had a look on her face that I recognized, the look of someone who has already decided how a conversation is going to go. My mother sat us all down at the kitchen table and explained, in the careful tone of someone diffusing something, that Clifton and Renata were in serious financial difficulty. The house they had bought in Airdrie, a 4-bedroom in a new development, far more than they needed, had been purchased with a variable rate mortgage. Rates had gone up significantly. Their payments had nearly doubled. They had also, it emerged in pieces over the next hour, accumulated a substantial amount of debt through a home equity line of credit that Renata had used to fund a series of business ventures that had not worked out. There was also a vehicle loan, and some credit card debt they had been transferring between cards. The total, when my father finally said the number out loud, was $380,000. I sat very still. "We want to figure this out together," my mother said, "as a family." I looked at Clifton. He was looking at the table. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked. My father cleared his throat. "We were hoping you might be able to help. I want to be careful here about how I describe what came next, because I've thought about it a lot." There was a version of that conversation where someone acknowledged that this was an enormous thing to ask, where someone said, "We know this isn't fair, we know this isn't your responsibility, but we're desperate and we're asking anyway." That version of the conversation didn't happen. What actually happened was that my mother said that I had always been good with money, as if that were a kind of character defect that had finally become useful. My father said that Clifton had a family to think about, They had a daughter, a 5-year-old named Petra, who was, I'll be honest, genuinely wonderful and entirely not responsible for any of this. And Clifton said, almost as an aside, that he knew I had savings because our mother had mentioned my TFSA once. How much are we talking about? I said. Specifically, we'd need around $380 to clear everything and keep the house, Clifton said. I don't have $380,000, but you have savings. And you make good money. You could take out a loan. I looked at him for a long time. You want me to take out a loan to pay off your debt? It would just be temporary, we'd pay you back. That was when Renata, who had been quiet in a deliberate way that felt performative, said, Clifton has been under so much stress. This has been incredibly hard on our family, I noticed, she said. Our family, not the family. I understand that, I said, but this isn't something I can do. The room got very quiet. My mother looked at me with an expression I can only describe as wounded surprise, as if she had expected me to simply say yes. My father stared at his coffee. Clifton looked up from the table for the first time and his face had changed. The careful, slightly ashamed look was gone, replaced by something harder. You've always acted like you're better than us, he said. You and your little downtown job and your cats, and your Clifton, my father said quietly. No, I'm serious, she has the money. She's choosing not to help. I don't have $380,000, but you could get it. You're asking me to go into debt for your debt. It's called being a family. I'm going to go, I said. I pushed my chair back. If you walk out of here, Clifton said, don't bother coming back. My mother made a soft sound. Renata was examining her nails. Okay, I said. I drove back to Calgary in the dark. I called my best friend Suki, who talked to me for 2 hours and told me I had done exactly the right thing. I fed my cats. I could not sleep. Here's the thing no one in that kitchen knew. 3 months earlier I had flagged something odd on my credit report, a hard inquiry from a lender I didn't recognize. I had put in a dispute and was waiting to hear back. I had been monitoring my credit regularly because of my job. Compliance work makes you paranoid in useful ways, and I knew my report well enough to know when something was off. 2 weeks after the kitchen table meeting I got a letter. It was from a provincial credit union. It was a notice about a personal loan in my name, a loan I had never applied for $47,000, drawn against my identity. The listed address was not mine. The listed employer was a company I had never heard of. I went very still in a way that felt different from the stillness at the kitchen table. That had been shock mixed with anger. This was something colder. I called the credit union immediately and told them there had been a fraudulent application. They confirmed that the loan had been approved 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks. I had been paying for my own groceries and my own rent and my own car insurance while someone had been borrowing $47,000 in my name without my knowledge. I called my bank. I called Equifax and TransUnion and put fraud alerts on both files. I called a lawyer, not the work-adjacent one I occasionally emailed with questions, but a proper one who dealt with financial fraud. And then, because something had started itching at the back of my brain in a way I couldn't ignore, I pulled out the documents from my last tax return and looked very carefully at the address the credit union had on file for the fraudulent loan. It was Clifton and Renata's address in Airdrie. I sat on my bathroom floor with that letter in my hand for a long time. Miso climbed into my lap and purred with the absolute indifference of a creature who has never needed to understand human betrayal. I didn't call Clifton. I didn't call my parents. I called my lawyer. What came out over the next 2 weeks was this. Renata had accessed my personal information through documents that had passed through my parents' home, old tax slips, a piece of mail that had been forwarded, a SIN card photocopy that my mother had made years ago just in case and kept in a household file. Renata had used that information to apply for the loan in my name and had the funds sent to an account she controlled. My lawyer was very calm when she explained this to me. Can you prove it? I asked. That's what the RCMP is for, she said. My lawyer filed a report. The RCMP Financial Crimes Unit opened an investigation. I was told not to contact Clifton or Renata directly. I agreed to this more easily than my lawyer probably expected because what I felt more than anything by that point wasn't rage. It was a kind of icy clarity, like a window getting very clean. My parents called several times that month. I told them I was dealing with a personal matter and couldn't talk. My mother left 2 voicemails saying she was worried about me. I didn't call back. I had told my lawyer about the kitchen table conversation, and she had advised me to limit contact with all parties. That was a professional instruction I was very happy to follow. What I did during those weeks was work. I went to my office every day. I fed my cats. I went to the climbing gym on Thursdays. I did not think about my brother or his wife any more than I had to, which was hard but easier than it sounds. Because every time I started to feel guilty, that old, familiar reflex, the one that lives in the chest of every person who grew up being the responsible one, I would think about that letter from the credit union, and the guilt would turn into something very flat and very certain. 6 weeks after the RCMP file was opened, I got a call from the detective assigned to the case. Renata had been interviewed. During the interview, she had initially denied everything, then partially admitted to accessing my documents, and then, this is the part my lawyer later described as not ideal strategy on her part, had suggested that I had verbally agreed to let her use my information as part of a family arrangement. I had not. My lawyer was beautifully, professionally angry on my behalf. 3 days later, I was at my desk reviewing a compliance report when my phone lit up with a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again. Then my father called. Then Clifton called from a number I didn't have saved. I listened to the voicemails that evening. My mother was crying. She said the RCMP had come to Clifton and Renata's house. She said Renata had been taken in for questioning again, and that it was serious. She said, and I remember this line very precisely because I have turned it over many times since, "I don't understand why you're doing this to our family." I sat with that for a while, then I called my mother back. "I'm not doing anything to our family," I said. "Someone used my identity to steal $47,000. That's a crime." I reported it. Renata says it was a misunderstanding. Petra needs her mother. I know, I said. I love Petra, that hasn't changed. Then why? Because what was done to me was wrong, I said, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. My mother went quiet, then she said softly, "Your brother is devastated." I thought about the kitchen table. I thought about the way Clifton had looked at me and said I was choosing not to help. I thought about the years of being the reliable one, the sensible one, the one who caused no trouble and asked for nothing, and how all of that had apparently added up in the family's accounting to a resource that could be drawn from without asking. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry it came to this." And I genuinely was. But sorry isn't the same as responsible. The investigation took another 4 months. Renata was ultimately charged with identity fraud and unauthorized use of personal information under the criminal code. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge. She received a conditional sentence and was ordered to repay the $47,000. She and Clifton separated 8 months later, though I only heard about that through my aunt, who texted me a long message full of thoughts I hadn't asked for. The mortgage on the house in Airdrie went into arrears. Clifton could not manage the payments on his own, especially with the legal costs. And the house was eventually sold under pressure from the lender. He moved into an apartment. My parents helped him as much as they could. I know all of this because my aunt, my mother's younger sister, a genuinely kind woman named Ruth who has always been able to exist at the edge of family drama without being consumed by it, kept me loosely informed. I had low contact with my parents for about 18 months. It was not the dramatic estrangement that people sometimes imagine when they hear the phrase cutting off family. It was quieter than that. It was not returning calls the same day. It was choosing not to go home for Christmas one year. It was letting the relationship exist at a level of frequency that felt survivable. My mother and I are in a better place now than we were. She has never fully said she was wrong. She did say, once on a phone call last spring, that she understood the situation and better now than she did at the time, and that she was proud of how I had handled myself. For my mother, that's as close to an apology as the language allows. I've decided it's enough. My father and I have a quieter relationship than we used to. He's a man who has always expressed love through fixing things and has struggled in the years when he couldn't fix what was broken. I understand that better than I used to. Clifton and I don't talk. I'm not angry at him anymore. That took longer than I expected, and involved more Thursday evenings at the climbing gym than I can count. But I don't have a version of a relationship with him that feels honest, and I've stopped trying to construct one. I sent Petra a birthday card and a gift in the mail last month. She turns 6 next week. Whatever happened between the adults in her life, she didn't choose any of it. What I did with the $47,000 that Renata was ordered to repay, It came back in installments, slowly, and the last of it arrived about 8 months ago. I put half of it into my FHSA. The other half I split between a top-up to my emergency fund and a small donation to a legal aid organization in Calgary that helps people who are victims of financial fraud but can't afford a lawyer. I think about that donation sometimes. I think about the version of me who didn't work in compliance, who didn't know to check her credit report, who didn't know what a hard inquiry meant or how to read a fraud notice. The version who would have gotten that letter from the credit union and not known what to do next. There are a lot of people in that position. It matters that someone helps them. Mizo is asleep on the arm of my couch right now. She is 13 years old and possibly psychic, and she has never once been wrong about a person. I should have listened to her years ago, but I'm listening now.